Tonight we are continuing a series we began last week on Sunday nights entitled Parting Words, and it's a reference to the first 17 verses of Hebrews chapter 13, which is of course the conclusion of that great epistle. The first 12 chapters of the book of Hebrews is a sweeping, eloquent discourse that is full of all kinds of profound truths about Jesus and His superiority and how He is better than the angels and how He has established a better covenant and how He is the new and the living way and such things. And that sweeping discourse ends with chapter 12. But then we have this series of instructions in chapter 13, one right after another. We talked about how different that is from the content of the first part of the book, but how it does belong there because all of those heavy, profound ideas in Hebrews chapters 1 through 12 have practical applications. There's a certain way we must live if all of those things are true. And that way of living is described in chapter 13 with these parting words to those readers of the book of Hebrews and to us as well. You know, the final words are always sometimes the most profound, and so I think it's a good reason to look at these. And also, believe it or not, we're closing in on the end of 2019, and so I think we'll finish this series sometime before the holidays, which kind of gives us parting words for 2019 as well. Good way to finish the year and get ready for 2020. Now, tonight's parting words are recorded in verse 2 of Hebrews chapter 13 in the instruction not to neglect to show hospitality to strangers. And I think this is timely for reasons I've already set out, but also because next week we're going to start something called Open Home Meetings in Ashville Road. And I'll take just a minute to explain what that is. Some of you are familiar with it, some of you haven't heard of it yet. But we started this among the young adults in spring and had about 7 open home meetings with them. And they went really well. And we want to open it up to all the age groups starting next week. I'll get information about times and dates and places out to you over the course of this week. So be looking for that in your email. And if you haven't received anything, just let me know and we'll make sure that you have the information that you need. But what these are meetings in the homes in which we use hospitality to try to build up members and also reach out to the lost so that we can hopefully bring them to Jesus. The idea for this came from my brother Barton's work in Cusco, Peru. He worked there for 10 years, and out of all the evangelistic strategies they tried, the open home meetings were the most successful of everything. It was what they did to get contacts and Bible studies, and eventually many converts were led to Christ through this act of hospitality. Basically, all it consists of is someone hosts a meeting in their home on a weeknight, say, or maybe on a Saturday, and folks for that group come over and they sit down and they discuss a passage of Scripture, they eat together, they pray together. And the result of that kind of thing is more powerful than you might imagine. It really draws people together. One thing that Barton told me that sticks with me and helps me understand the importance of this is the assembly is for worship, Bible classes are for information, and the open home meetings are for sharing. So you're reading a passage of Scripture and you're looking at some questions of application to that. But as you're doing it, you're talking with one another about what God's Word means. There's something really powerful about that, how it draws people together, makes them more comfortable and makes them open up to one another. Also, there's always food, right? So we eat at these things, and there's something about meals that help us to relax with one another and open up to one another the way that we should, and hold each other accountable and encourage one another and edify one another. As I said, there are 3 groups of people that we have in mind for these. There are the mature Christians who they need to build relationships and strengthen relationships as well. And then there are the Christians that are a little weak or maybe struggling in some way, and I've seen them grow stronger through these kinds of things. And then there's the lost. We've got to continue to think about ways to reach out to the lost. We're just not doing it the way that we should. At Ashville Road, we talk about planting seed and growing plants and bearing fruit. And we have measures for all of those, but are we planting seeds effectively? Open home meetings is a great way to plant seed. And I'll explain it this way. A lot of people who are out there, our neighbors, our coworkers, our friends, even our family members, may not feel comfortable starting out with an introduction to Christ through a worship service or a visit to church. And maybe you've invited a person like this to church many times, and they come up with an excuse. They say, well, I go to my own church, or I go to church somewhere else, or I work late on Saturdays, or I don't have anything to wear. They'll say things like that. And so you're just not having any luck getting them to come in. But you know that there would be some interest if they could just see what Christ is all about and His people are all about. Well, you could invite them into an open home meeting. Ask them to come over for a free meal, sit down with some friends, meet some friends. And a lot of people are looking for friendships. They're looking for that kind of thing. They're very lonely. And they come in, they're a lot more comfortable with that than maybe starting out with a worship service. And after sitting down, having a meal, and meeting some people, they sit down in somebody's living room and they read a short passage of Scripture and hear Christians discussing it with one another. And then it's time for prayer, and they are asked, do you have any prayer requests? Is there anything that we can pray for you about? And suddenly they feel a lot more comfortable with these people. And then a few weeks later, they're invited to a church service. Say it's Friends and Family Day. Well, they already know dozens of people at this church. They're a lot more likely to come in. They know more about us. And they might be more comfortable. Or they're invited to a one-on-one Bible study. And they're a lot more comfortable because they know who we are and where we're coming from. And so it has a tremendous outreach opportunity as well. And so be listening for things along this line this week. We'll get some information out to you so you can know more about it. I'm very excited about it. We're going to work with 3 groups to begin with and maybe expand these groups out. I mentioned the young adult group. And then we're going to work with a group ages 35 to 55 and then a group 55 and up. Now listen, whenever we start breaking people up into ages, it gets a little sticky, and we're not going to be very strict about that. In fact, you can, if your spouse is on either end of one of those breaks, you can go to whatever age group you feel most comfortable with, and that's fine with us. The main thing is we want to get into our homes, and we want to be practicing hospitality again. Because as we're going to see in tonight's lesson from Hebrews 13, hospitality was a major part of the life of the early church. It was a commandment that was given to the church. It's not an option. We are supposed to be practicing hospitality, but we just don't do that much anymore. We make excuses. We're too busy. Our houses aren't clean. We're working too much. Whatever the excuse is, the command's still there that we should do it. And so as we look at Hebrews chapter 13, verse 2, I want us to notice 3 things about hospitality. First of all, the act of hospitality. Secondly, the scope of hospitality. And then finally, the potential of hospitality. So let's start with the first point there, the act of hospitality. As I said, this is a Christian practice. And here we have in our text, Hebrews 13:2, a commandment. Do not neglect to show hospitality to strangers, for thereby some have entertained angels unawares. He's talking about the act of hospitality. And there he's given a commandment. And this isn't the only place. There are a lot of other places where you can find this, such as 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 9. Show hospitality to one another without grumbling. And then Romans 12, verse 13 is another great example. Contribute to the needs of the saints and seek to show hospitality. And so don't just be ready whenever the opportunity presents itself. Look for opportunities to do this for other folks. It's all through the Bible. You can turn to 3 John And in verses 5 and following, John says it's a faithful thing for Christians to support the strangers in their brotherhood. In other words, people from out of town that are Christians and need a place to stay. John says it's a faithful thing to give them a home to stay in away from home, or feed them with a meal, or let them rest at your place for a little bit of time, because they are on a journey in God's service. And then also, it's interesting that of the qualities mentioned for elders, qualifications for elders, hospitality is there in the list in 1 Timothy chapter 3 and also in Titus chapter 1. It's also a requirement for widows who are enrolled in 1 Timothy chapter 5. So it was something that was expected of leaders, particularly the more experienced Christians, more seasoned saints, if you will. It's not something that was optional. It was something that was commonplace, and they wanted to keep it going. So where did it go? Why isn't the act of hospitality as common today as it used to be? Our English word hospitality is closely related to the word hospital. I found this interesting when you looked into it. It kind of tells us a little bit about what hospitality is. In ancient times, travelers had a difficult time, as you would imagine, finding clean, comfortable accommodations when they were on the road, especially Christians, because if they were able to find a place that was clean and accommodating, it was often a den of immorality. And they didn't want to be there because of the temptations to sin. And so they had a really hard time. And around the 5th century, church leaders started providing houses for guests they called hospices, after the Latin word hospice, which means guest. And they would be places that Christians who were traveling could stay in, which were clean, comfortable, and accommodative, and didn't present temptations to sin. And for many years, that's where travelers and pilgrims and people in the Crusades would stop and rest when they were on the road. After the Crusades, secular interests began to build hotels and inns and things like that for travelers. So they took over that role, leaving the church with hospices that took care of just the sick and the weak and the infirm, which is that's how we use the word hospice or hospital today, which literally means a haven for guests. So it's really interesting. You look at the word hospital, it is related to hospitality. It's a practice of showing care and concern to those who can't care for themselves. A lot of times when we use the word hospitality, we usually think of entertaining guests. There's a difference between just simply entertaining and showing hospitality. Entertaining says, I want to impress you with my home. I want you to come in and just be impressed by my decorations in my home and really be wowed by my tastes. But hospitality says, this home is a gift from my Lord, and I will use it as He desires. It's a matter of service. Entertaining declares, this home is mine. This home is an expression of my personality. Look and be impressed by it. But hospitality says, what's mine is yours. Entertaining looks for payment. It wants to hear you say, this is such a beautiful place. But hospitality's payment is knowing that someone was made comfortable, someone was served, someone was shown the love of Christ in your home. There's a difference between entertainment and hospitality. The model for entertainment are magazines on having dinners and having people into your home and impressing them, but the model for hospitality is God's Word. It tells us how to be friendly and welcoming to people, those we know, and as we see in Hebrews 13:2, those that we don't know so well. The early church was really good at this. In fact, there's some early church historical sources that show that outsiders to the church were either impressed or they were scorned by the hospitality that the church showed. They took notice of it. It was a mark of the church. We've got to bring that back. We've got to get back into that kind of thing. And that's why we have this commandment that we're looking at in the parting words of Hebrews chapter 13, verse 2. Now, having looked at the act of hospitality and learning a little bit more about what it was, let's talk about the scope of hospitality. And noting the first few words there. Show hospitality to strangers. It's 4 words, but in the Greek language it was written in, it's just one word. It's this word philoxenia. Philo meaning love, xenia meaning stranger. So it means do not neglect stranger love, which sounds kind of odd, I know, but it tells you a little about the context. If you'll remember last week, we started this series off with the instruction in verse 1. Let brotherly love continue. And then verse 2 says, do not neglect stranger love. So you see, the first 2 commandments are related to one another. The first has to do with loving those that you know, and the second one has to do with loving those you don't know. So the scope here is a lot broader than we might expect when it comes to hospitality. Hospitality is not just for our brothers and sisters in Christ, our family members, our friends, and our neighbors that we're familiar with. We're supposed to extend it even out beyond that to people that we don't know so well. And that's what our homes are for. That's what our church buildings are for. That's what our cars are for. God gives us these gifts to use in His service. Let me give you a few examples. This building, we have this beautiful building, and we need to be using it, among other things, for hospitality. So we have a few events like that, like Fall Festival. Fall Festival is something we do every fall, and it's a lot of fun for the kids. And when we started, it was just for our kids. But this thing has grown to where hundreds of people in the community come, and they're served, and they have some fun, and they're shown how Christians can have fun in a clean way, and hopefully are introduced to us in a way that would make them want to come to a worship service or have a Bible study with us, and identify us in a good way and help our reputation in this community. That's what Vacation Bible School is as well. We don't just do Vacation Bible School for our own kids, although it is a way to educate and grow our children here, but we're always working on visitors, right, Tim? We reward our kids for bringing visitors. We encourage them every night. We count our visitors. We register them. We follow up on them. We really want them to come. That's hospitality. That's looking not just for our own, but using this building, this place, for others as well. I thought of another example of the way that we often use our church building for outsiders, and we usually don't think of it as hospitality, but by tonight's definition, I really think it is, and that's the meals that we do around funerals. You know, I'm at most of those meals, and the Christians are in the minority at those meals. We're usually doing them for a member of this church, but their family members oftentimes have never been in a church before, or if they have, it has been a denomination, not the Churches of Christ, or certainly not this congregation. They come in, and especially afterwards, after such a long day and maybe being out in the rain at the graveside or out in the intense heat, they come into our very comfortable, nice fellowship hall, and they just say, "This is so nice." And so many of you are so friendly, and you serve them, and you give them a cup of coffee, or they get a hot meal, and they see what Christian love is all about through hospitality. Of course, it's not just this church building. We have homes, and the open home meetings are a great opportunity for you if you'd like to do something like this, if you have the means to do it. Not all of you do, to host one of those meetings and have people into your homes. And I'm not going to lie to you, it's not convenient, it's not easy, it's hard work, but every time you have one, you're so glad that you did, because you see how people feel welcomed in your home, and you feel like, I'm using this home that God has given me for His purposes. Your car is a great object of hospitality. You may not have looked at it before, but we have one sister here who has told me that when she sees somebody walking down 411, she picks them up and gives them a ride. And some people might think, well, that's crazy, but she does it, and she has an opportunity to talk with them and help them out in the comfort of a car. You just don't know how nice it is to have a car until you lose one, and you're walking through the weeds in 98-degree heat and the ant beds and everything on Highway 411. Some people have to do that every day to get to work. And, we don't pick up hitchhikers much anymore, and I know there's stories out there about how scary that can be. But the people who do that kind of thing, what are they doing? What's the name for that? We usually say, well, that's service or something else. But what it is, it's hospitality. It's showing love to strangers. Do not neglect to do that. And as I said, it's inconvenient. That's why Peter says in 1 Peter 4:9, show hospitality to one another without grumbling or without complaining. He wouldn't have to say that if it wasn't inconvenient. So we can come up with all of our excuses, but even in coming up with the excuses, we're going against Scripture that says, basically, show hospitality and don't make excuses about it. Don't grumble and complain about it. The fact is, as Christians, we're supposed to love more than other people, and that includes the scope of this. That includes the outsiders. Jesus said this on the Sermon on the Mount. If you love those who love you, what reward do you have? Do not even the tax collectors do the same? And if you greet only your brothers, what more are you doing than others? Do not even the Gentiles do the same? You can look all through the Bible for a passage that says, only do the convenient things, or avoid that which is uncomfortable for you. It's not in there. Nowhere in there does it say that. Instead, time and time again, it's asking us to do more than what's comfortable, to reach out of those comfort zones and do more than what is normal and what others do. Look at the inspired definition for love in 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verses 4 through 7. It's asking us to act against our natural inclinations, to act against our impulses and our emotions, to be patient, to be kind, to not be irritable or resentful, to not take into account a wrong suffered, to believe all things and bear all things and hope all things and endure all things. These are not conveniences. Christian love was never meant to be convenient. And love, Jesus said, is the greatest commandment. And John explains in 1 John chapter 3, verse 16, that this greatest commandment we're to follow often involves sacrifice. He says, by this we know love, that He laid down His life for us, and we ought to lay down our lives for the brothers. We live in such a free and comfortable country. I think we forget what Christianity cost our brothers that lived centuries before us. It cost them their lives. It cost Jesus His life. And we make excuses about hospitality. Here, John's saying Christian love ought to give, if it's necessary, you ought to be willing to give up your life for it. And we complain about having to give up a little time and a little trouble and having somebody into our home or showing them love and whatever opportunity is presented to us. And so the scope of hospitality is much more than we might first think. It's not just about having your best friend over or your family over. It's about using your home to reach out and build up weaker members of the faith and even reach out and bring new people into the faith who have been lost and have no hope at all through Jesus Christ. That leads me to the third and final point, the potential of hospitality. Excuse me. Now we get to the most interesting part of this verse, right? Everybody wants to know about the angels. Because he says, do not neglect to show hospitality to strangers, for by doing so, some have entertained angels unawares. Oh, we want to hear about the angels. You know, is it possible that angels are sitting in here tonight and maybe an angel will come into my home? This passage is not about angels, but it does allude back to angels. And probably, everyone agrees that probably what the writer was thinking about was Genesis chapters 18 and 19. Abraham's just minding his own business one day, and what appear to be three men come to his tent. They're passing through, and Abraham, you see, he's seeking to show hospitality. Romans 12:13. He begs them to come aside, to rest for a little while, to have some food with him, to have some water before they go on their way. And they agree to stay. And as it turns out, we know these weren't just mere men. They were angels. One was named the angel of the Lord. And so Abraham didn't do it thinking these could be angels. He had no idea at the beginning these were angels. These are just three common men to him passing through, and he did what he did with every man who was passing through like that. He invited them to stay and fed them and showed hospitality. And as it turned out, it was a great opportunity for him. That's not the only case. Other examples in the Old Testament, Gideon in Judges chapter 6 was threshing wheat in a winepress to hide it from the Midianites who were oppressing the Israelites. And an angel of the Lord, it just looked like a man to him, greeted him and called him mighty man of valor. And Gideon was kind of sarcastic with him, and they talked for a while. And finally, Gideon did probably what was his custom. He asked the man to stop and have a meal with him. And so the angel came by and visited and stopped for a meal. And later, it was known to Gideon that he was an angel. And Gideon says, "Alas, O Lord God, for now I have seen the angel of the Lord face to face." Another example from the book of Judges, in Judges 13, are the parents of Samson. Angel visits them. They don't know it's an angel. They think it's a man. They invite him to eat with them. He says, "Well, I'm not really interested in food, but if you'll prepare an offering to the Lord, that would be great." They light the fire to the offering, and suddenly this man goes up with the fire into heaven. And then they realize this was not a man. This was an angel. And like Gideon, they're afraid. But I think it's Samson's mother, the voice of reason, who says, would he have visited us and done all of this if he intended to kill us? Of course not. But these are examples in the Old Testament that the writer may be alluding to, but he's not saying there's an angel around every corner. Look for angels. What we just looked at are three very rare occurrences in Scripture. But he's giving an example to say this. Here's the point. Do not neglect to show hospitality, because you never know. If you neglect to do that, you could be missing a golden opportunity. You could be missing a golden opportunity. Every act of hospitality has the potential to be a life-changing opportunity for you or for the person to whom you're showing hospitality. Now, in saying some have entertained angels unawares means that it might not be an opportunity. You're taking a risk here. It may turn out to be nothing. But that's why you do it in every case, every opportunity that you have, because you just never know. You never know. So what are some possible angels that he's talking about here? What are the possible opportunities that he could be talking about? One that I thought of course, is a prospect for the gospel. And we live in a society, maybe we always have, I can only speak about the present. We live in a society where people are not that responsive to what I call cold call evangelism, where you just go up to them without any introduction and start preaching the gospel to them. Street preachers shouting through bullhorns are not very effective. Phone calls, telemarketing calls, not very effective. Direct mailers, not very effective. Door knocking is not really effective. You can get some results if you do enough in bulk, but do you have the resources to do that? And is it the most efficient means? I think everybody agrees the most efficient way to bring somebody into Christ is through a relationship. And that's how Jesus did it. He didn't walk around and just bless people without getting to know them. He had conversations with people. He listened to them. He talked with them. He went into their homes and gave them an opportunity to show Him hospitality. He spent time with people even though He was only on earth for a short period of time. I love the saying, facts don't change people, friends do. The facts are important, but the sad thing is people just don't care about the facts unless they come from friends. So what do we got to do? We've got to make friends with people. And how do we do that? Well, there are a lot of ways, but one is invite them into your home. This is a great opportunity for evangelism. To bring somebody into your home, make them comfortable, plant a seed, and then invite them to church, study the Bible with them. You know, as I said before, people make all kinds of excuses for not attending church. They make fewer excuses about not coming into your home and sharing a meal with you and your friends. There are a lot of lonely people out there that would love to come to your house and meet your friends. That's one golden opportunity. The lost, evangelism. But then you also think about another opportunity, and just somebody who is in need. In Matthew chapter 25, we read about this judgment scene beginning in verse 31. We call it the parable of the sheep and the goats. And in that, the king, this is Jesus, the Son of Man, he says to those on his right, the sheep, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me." That's our subject tonight. The third item on the list. I was a stranger, the Lord says, and you welcomed me. Talk about entertaining angels unawares. What about entertaining the Son of Man unawares? That's even greater, right? He goes on, I was naked and you clothed me, sick and you visited me, in prison you came to me. And the righteous said, Lord, when did we see you hungry and thirsty? When did we see you a stranger and welcome you? And what did Jesus say? Everybody knows what he said. Inasmuch as you did it to the least of these my brethren, you did it to me. To the goats, they're condemned because when he was a stranger, they didn't welcome him in. And they asked, Lord, when did we see you a stranger and not welcome you in? Inasmuch as you did it not to the least of these my brethren, my brothers and sisters in my body, you did it not to me. Here's the golden opportunity. It may be that there's somebody who really needs this, who really needs a friend, who really needs to be invited into your home, really needs to be a part of hospitality or an open home meeting or whatever the opportunity is. And in serving them, you're serving Jesus himself. Another way to put it is, Jesus takes it personally when you neglect to help one of his children. And Jesus takes it personally when you show hospitality to one of his children. In the face of the poor, in the face of the stranger, in the face of the one in need, we meet Jesus. That's what he's saying here. And let's keep in mind, this is a judgment scene. And we know a lot of things will be taken into account on Judgment Day. Of course, he's going to look, has someone received the gospel of grace? Have they come through faith to an obedience of the truth? Have they been baptized into Jesus Christ? Have they repented of their sins? Have they lived a faithful life? Of course, he will take that into account. But he's also going to look at, among other things, our hospitality. Have we been welcoming to those who are in need? This is a great opportunity. The potential is limitless. And that's why he says, some have entertained angels unawares. You say, well, I could maybe, not knowing, interact with an angel. No, you could do something greater than that. I'm sure interacting with an angel must be an amazing experience. But I don't think it's half as wonderful as leading somebody to Jesus Christ and changing their lives for the good for an eternity. Leading them from hell to heaven for an eternity? That's more wonderful than meeting an angel. And that is the potential that we're talking about here. And one of the things that excites me about open home meetings is that it makes hospitality easy. And so be looking for some simple things that you can do. And I think everybody pretty much here can do one of these things. You can host one of these meetings. We'll be getting more information to you about how you can do that. I already have hosts lined up for next week, so we've already got that. You can lead a discussion just by using a simple handbook that we'll get to you. You can lead a discussion. You can bring food. And here's the last one that I think everybody can do. You can show up. Okay? If you can show up here, you can show up in somebody's home for one of these meetings. And all of those are ways to show hospitality. We're always asking, Why isn't the church today growing the way that it grew in the first century? And the way to answer that question is to ask, what are we not doing now that they did then? And folks, there are a lot of things. There are a lot of things. And I think we often beat ourselves up about the outcome. Well, we say we're not doing evangelism. But what does that mean? Practically speaking, what is evangelism? Well, it's teaching the lost. What does that mean? What does it mean? Well, I think what it means is connecting with a person and building an opportunity to tell them the truth of God's Word. And there are a lot of ways you can do that. Hospitality is one that we have been missing. I'm not just saying here, everywhere. Because we live in this fast-paced society. Nowadays, it's commonplace, and it's just the way it is. I'm not condemning it. It's commonplace for everybody in the household to be working, moms and dads. This is the way my family lives. It's probably the way most of your families live. It's a very fast-paced world. Kids are playing ball. There's homework to do. There's extracurricular activities. But where is time for the Lord? That's what we've got to ask. Are we making time for Him? We've got to push other things away if we have to and make this a priority. Show hospitality. Show hospitality. Well, tonight, you are in this place, and we are here to welcome you. And maybe there's something that you need prayer about. We want to be here for you if that is your need. Maybe you're ready to put on Christ in baptism. We welcome you to do that. We want to help you in any way we can. We've selected a song to be sung to encourage you, and if there's anything that you can do, that we can do for you, we ask you to come right now as we stand and as we sing.